Obviously, censorship around the issue of Palestine is pretty commonplace, but I have to admit, I was surprised that they did it to me. My name's Katie Halper. I'm the host of 2 YouTube shows and podcasts. One is called The Katie Halper Show, one is called Useful Idiots, and up until very recently, I was a weekly contributor to the show Rising, which is at The Hill. That relationship ended when I was censored and fired over a monologue I wrote about Rashida Tlaib and Israel being an apartheid state.
That among progressives, it has become clear that you cannot claim to hold progressive values, yet back Israel's apartheid government. And we will continue to push back and not accept this idea that you are progressive except for Palestine any longer.
For saying that she was smeared, called an anti-Semite, accused of making anti-Semitic remarks by members of Congress, also by Jonathan Greenblatt, the head of the Anti-Defamation League, or the ADL. He falsely accused her of creating a litmus test for American Jews. She never said anything about American Jews. She was just talking about what it means to be a progressive. In response to this, you also had Jake Tapper, who has a history of picking on Rashida Tlaib, doing a segment on this on CNN, and he said that she made comments that some of her Jewish colleagues found anti-Semitic. So what I wanted to do was push back on the attacks on Tlaib and also lay out the case for why Israel is indeed an apartheid government. So I wrote my monologue, I went into the studio, they loaded it into the teleprompter, I recorded it, and as I was leaving for the day, I got a phone call from a producer who said that she wanted me to hear it from her that higher-ups at The Hill had decided not to run the radar, had decided not to publish the monologue. They had seen it and they didn't feel comfortable publishing it. So then I asked her why, and she said that there was a policy at The Hill that she didn't know about up until now, where they were not running op-eds about Israel, either in video or in written form. The producers had told me that while Israel was out of bounds for op-eds, you could talk about it in a segment. So I proposed talking about it as a segment. That's when the producers told me to check my email, and I saw I had an email from an executive from The Hill who said, "Hi Katie, we won't be needing you to do your segment tomorrow morning. Please feel free to send any unpaid invoices. We wish you the best of luck." So I was fired from both hosting and my weekly appearances, which had again gone on for 3 years. This again is part of a larger pattern. We've seen people like Norman Finkelstein, Juan Cole, Abby Martin, Mark Lamont Hill, Stephen Salaita all get either fired or barred from speaking because of their support of the Palestinian cause. Basically, people who want to defend Israel, they can't really engage in the substance of the debate, so they have to pretend that anyone criticizing Israel is an anti-Semite. We've seen that again and again. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish. Norman Finkelstein is Jewish, and in fact, his parents were survivors of the Holocaust. They both survived concentration camps. I'm Jewish. That also didn't matter in this case. The irony about presenting any criticism of Israel as anti-Semitic is that in itself is an anti-Semitic trope, because anti-Semites are the people who like to conflate being Jewish with being a Zionist. They like to conflate Jewish identity with a particular political view. They present Jews as one monolith with no diversity of opinion, who all support Israel with a blind fervor. That's simply not true. And in fact, anti-Semites like to use the word Zionist as a shorthand for Jews. So you have anti-Semites and the ADL and AIPAC basically trafficking in the same anti-Semitic tropes, which should be worrying to anyone who cares about anti-Semitism. It's becoming harder and harder to deny Israel's culpability. I mean, in the video that I made, I argued that Israel is an apartheid state, and I didn't use any ad hominem. All I did was laid out why. And to prove my case, I cited international law, the United Nations, the International Criminal Court. I also cited human rights organizations like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, several Palestinian human rights organizations. I cited and quoted B'Tselem, an Israeli human rights organization, all of which agree that Israel imposes apartheid. Maybe they fired me because they were uncomfortable with having a very well-argued monologue as opposed to a discussion. I don't know if that was the difference. I don't know if the difference was the change in ownership. I don't know if it was just apartheid. Maybe I could criticize Israel, but saying it's an apartheid nation was just a bridge too far. But again, in theory and in action and in fact, they don't ever intervene. There's no editorial process with their hosts, which begs the question, why this one? I guess because it really is too much of a taboo subject, even for a place that prides itself in allowing independent thought. During the March of Return, we saw how indiscriminate Israeli snipers were, and they were more than okay with shooting people who were clearly marked as press, as well as medics. So this is part of a much larger problem. Again, what happened to me really pales in comparison to the way that journalists actually lose their livelihoods and their lives for covering this issue. It's really important that people not back down. I know it's hard because you can get censored, smeared, fired for saying these things, but we have to try to be brave and courageous. A lot of people are risking their lives. I'm not doing anything close to that, but the least I can do is try to keep speaking out, and I encourage everyone else to do that as well.